Good morning, students. In last class, we have discussed the factors affecting the rate of Weinberg law or a mechanism, the factors affecting the evolution. So, in last class, we have studied one is the first one, we have studied a mutation, what is a mutation, and secondly, we have discussed the genetical recombination, or we can use that as reproduction also. So, here coming to the third one, that is a genetic gene flow, the gene flow. So, here a gene flow can be defined as the transferring of genes between the two interbreeding population. That means the transferring of genes here, the transferring of genes between two interbreeding population. So, this process we can call as a gene flow. So, here it can be also defined as the transferring of genes from a donor to the recipient, or receptors to form a new genetic variations where genetical combination are taken place, a combination. So, here the transferring of the genes from a donor to the recipients. So, here for example, here it consists of the donor will consisting of capital A, small a, capital A, small a. So, these are the genotype where they are presenting that are transferred to the capital B, small b, capital B, and small b, or these are the where here it combination, here it takes place a new genetical variations, capital A, capital S, capital B, capital A, small b, capital A, small a, capital B. So, these are the variations where it takes place here a new genetical recombination. That means these are the two interbreeds. These are the two interbreeding population where here the transferring of donor from donor to the recipient, where here it forms a new genetical recombinations are taken place. So, such type of process we can call as a genetical variations. So, here the genetical variation, that means transferring from here increasing the population. When it is increasing population is taken place due to the factors of mutation and immigration. So, here it is due to the increasing the gene population. Increasing the genes population. So, that is main factors are that is taken place due to the mutation as well as a migration. It is taken place, that is due to the, and it helpful for the formation of, that is due to the mutation and migration. It is helpful for where here it helpful for the formation, increasing the factors of this, where here this is mainly, here increasing genes is mainly taken place by mutation and not immigration. It is due to the hybridization. hybridization. So here due to the hybridization, here a new combination, new varieties of combinations are produced where this will be taken place in an a population. So that is the factors where it helpful in an a gene, that is a gene flow, where here this can be taken place in an high mountain ranges, as well as it can also be taken place in a high mountains ranges, forest, seas. This will be taken place. And also an example here, an example we can taken place. Example, if it taken place means in a population, that is in a plants population, the seeds will be transferred from a variety far away from the parental population. That means if seeds are taken place, that means in a parental plants, in a parental plants, the seeds are transferred, seeds are transferred by the wind from the far away from parental plants. That is it is an example where we can take in place. That is an example where here also, that means two interbreeding population will helpful for the transferring of gene between two interbreeding population, where to produce a new genetical combinations are producing, then we can call that as a gene flow, or otherwise example here the parental seeds which are produced, the seeds by the wind, these seeds are transferred far away from the parental plant, where here a new species are formed with a new recombinant characters are producing. That is the main factor which is taken place in a gene flow. Here gene flow here taken place, here it is taken place in a population. Here the gene flow will be taken place in a population, where in this population will consist of a gene pool also. It also consists of a gene pool. What is the gene pool means? The sum total of genes present in a population we can call as a gene pool. Sum total of genes present in an population, then it is called as a gene pool. That gene pool mainly it is presenting due to the alleles that are present on the alleles which are presenting on the same locus. These are taken place which are related with a gene flow also. That is mainly here it takes place on the gene flow as well as a gene frequency also. This can be taken place. Next, second one, that is the fourth one is a genetic drift. So next, coming to the fourth one, that is a genetic drift. Here the fourth one is a genetic drift. The fourth one is the genetic drift, or otherwise here we can use the word as the Sewell Wright effect. The Sewell Wright effect. Here it can be defined as the random changes, that means in a gene frequency random changes in a population purely by the chance. That means in a a small population, gene frequency can be changes in a small population. In a small population, gene frequency, the gene frequency can be changes purely, randomly changes. Gene frequency randomly changes purely by the chance, CHANCES, purely by the chance. So this population, this process we can call as the genetic drift. That means in a small population the gene frequency randomly changes purely by the chance. Purely means here by acting upon the external forces, here evolution may be taken a place. That is due to this here it helpful for, that means genetical drift can be taken place. If you taken place this one here, it can be taken place by purely by a chance. Purely by chance it is taken place, and also it was discovered by a scientist called as Sewell Wright effect. It was introduced by Sewell Wright. It was introduced by the scientist Sewell Wright. So instead of his name we can call this as a Sewell Wright effect also. And also here it can be taken place. Example, if it is taken place here, an example if it taken place in this that is in a Sewell Wright effect. Here if it taken place the toss, the head and toss, that means for example if it taken place a coin if it taken place, it takes if coin is taken place, if it is the head or a tail, here it can able to produce the 50%, it can able to produce the head, and 50% can able to produce the tail. That is by the purely by the a chance only this can be taken a place. That means if you taken a coin and make a head and a tail, so here by 100% here 50% of head will be produces and 50% is a tail is producing. So that here what happens, it is by the purely by the chance. That means it is taken place by the chance only. It can able to produce in a small population only. That means the gene frequency, here gene frequency means it is the ratio of alleles present in a population that will be taken place by purely by the chance only will be taken place. That is an example which was explained by the Sewell Wright an effect. And also here this can be explained, that means this can be also called as it is also called as founder effects. Why means some of the alleles may be totally different when compared to the parental population, and will be significantly build up a new population into new genotypes. That means in a new population, here it can able to produce a new genotype is produces. A new genotype is produced. When this new type of genotype is produced, here it helpful for the producing of a new species. A new species are forming. So here founding of a new species, where in a population, that is in a new population, here we are founding a new genotype is producing. The genotype which is presenting it helpful for producing of a new type of species, so that here it can able to founding of a new species. So that here it is also called as the founder effect also. Why means founding? Then means you are founding of a new population in a small population, in new population. That is in a small population, a new genotype is founding. That new genotype is helpful for formation of a new species formations are taken place. So that here it is also called as a new, it is also called as the founder and effect also. Why means here in some of the population where you are having different type of genotypes, that means the population, a new population is founding. In this new population will consist of a new type of genotypes are presenting. These new type of genotypes will transfer from generation to generation to form a new species. That means founding of a new species founding is taken place. So that here we can call as the founder. It is also called as formation of a new species. So this effect, this is called as the founder and effect also. So this is mainly, it is taken place, that is a genetic drift in a small population. The gene frequency randomly changes purely by a chance. That means here chance, by producing chance only, here the gene frequency will transferring to produce a new type of species or formations are taken place. So that is called as a genetic drift. That is a fourth character. Next, coming to the fifth one. Here the fifth one is the natural selection. So here we know that a natural selection. So here a natural selection, it can be defined the process, the selection of a better adaptive environment by the nature. That means here the process, it can be defined as the process of the producing better adapting individuals are produced by the nature, that we can call as a natural selection. Selection of better adaptive individuals with a useful variation. That is here we can process that selection of better. Here it can be defined as the selection of adaptive individuals, adaptive individuals by the useful variations by the nature. That means here the selection of adaptive, that is adaptive individuals by useful variation by the nature. That means nature will select, already we have discussed in the variations. If the variations will having useful variations, these useful variations is helpful for the adaptive characters, better adaptive character selection, better adaptive individuals. Here better adaptive individuals by the useful variation by the nature, then it is called as a natural selection. So here when the natural selection adapting of the genes, that means here the new adaptive, that means what are the characters are containing new genes which are presenting in an individuals, that are transmitted from a generation to a generation. These are transferring where here it helpful for producing a new variety of species are produces. And also here by showing the less adaptive variation, that means the less adaptive radiations If having high adaptive or here increasing the genes or high adaptive value having here it helpful for increasing their number from generation to a generation. If they having less adaptive variations, these are gradually deleted from the nature. So here genes which are having here that is process we can call as an reproductive isolation, we can call as a differential, that is sorry, we can call as differential reproduction, differential reproduction. So what is this differential reproduction means? Here better adaptive characters of genes transferring from generation, they increase their number, and less adaptive characters here better adaptive characters or genes transfer from generation to generation, but less adaptive, but less adaptive characters or genes will loses and becomes extinct, but less adaptive genes will lose and becomes extinct, extinct or lost. Then such process we can call them as an differential and radiation, that is differential reproduction. That is, here it shows adaptive individual fail to reproduce at slow rate, and the genes are eventually lost. That means here lossing of the genes. Here lossing of the genes where it is taken place, better adaptive, they increase their generation from generation to generation, but less adaptive character genes will lose and becomes extinct. So this process we can call as an differential reproductive, it is called as differential reproduction, where here will be example we can take on place here in a natural selection. Example we can take on place that is the body size leading towards stabilization, example if you take on place body sized towards the stabilizing selection as well as a directional selection and distributive directions or distributive direction. That means body size of towards stabilizing selections, and second one is stabilizing, and the second one is we can call that as directional distribution, second one directional, and the third one is distributive direction. Distributive directions. So here there are three type of selections are presenting. An example we taken place here, the body size towards stabilization selection, directional, and distributions. So here if we take on place Here the selections is based on the three selections. One is stabilizing selection, and second one is the directional, and the third one is distributive. So here if it taken place the size of these, here what happens in stabilizing, here the mean size is always in a peak level, where here it shows that the natural selection, that is the species, here will having all will having an intermediate and average sized, the body sized organisms are presenting, where here the mean level will always be a constant, will not be a changes. Then we can call this as the stabilizing. This is called as a stabilizing the selections. But in a directional, if it taken place in a directional, will consist of the mean level. Here will having the mean level will be the having very low essential. So here here will having an intermediate, that means here will having an intermediate sized individuals are presenting, where here the mean size will be varies. Here the mean value will be varying. Here will having an intermediate, medium size, not here an intermediate sizes of a body sized organisms are presenting, then we can call this as an directional and directional selections. And lastly, if it taken place distributive, here distributive selections will having two peak levels are presenting, will having two peak levels, where you will having a small sized body sized organisms are presenting, where you will consisting of two peak levels. Here will having the two peak levels are presenting, then such condition we can call this as the distributive. Will having here will having the medium sized. So here the mean value will be changes where into small sized and individuals. The small sized and individuals are taken place, that is mainly due to the natural selections, that is divided into three types. One is stabilizing and directional and also a distributed. Here the mean value does not be changes, here less will be changes, and here it is divided, the mean value is divided into two peak levels. Then such type of directions we can, selections we can call as distributive directions, which are taken place. An example, that is a body size towards a stabilizing selection, a directional selection, as well as a distributive directions. So that is the fourth one, that is fifth one, that is the natural selections. So in next class we will discuss the remaining factors. Now coming to the next one, that is sixth one, that is speciation. So here in natural selection we have studied the stabilizing, directional and also distributive. So in stabilizing, here large size or medium size, large size or small size population will having the average type of individuals are produced. But in directional, here the small size or large size population, where here it produces other type of populations or other type of peak levels or other type average size, that means other type of body sized organisms are produces. Where here will having there is that means in distributive will having the average sized individuals will not be presenting, but will having two peak levels are presenting. There is no medium sizes not presenting in a distributive levels. Next, coming to the last, that is the sixth one, that is the speciation. Here speciation means the formation of a new species. Here it is can be defined as the formation of new species is called as the formation of a new species. The formation of a new species is called as the speciation. So here the adaptive characters in a natural selection, if they are adaptive, here more adaptive characters are presenting. These organisms increase generation from generation to generation. They increases and helpful for the producing of a new type of a species or produces. And also here during the process, the organisms with a favorable variations allowed to produce by the nature, where that new variations characters which are presenting that are transmitted from generation to generation and increasing a new species are presented. And also here less adaptive characters which containing less variations characters which are presenting, gradually they are deleted from the nature. That is mainly taken place due to the speciation. And also here it takes place due to the cumulative effect of process, new structural and forming, which leads to the, that means due to cumulative structures, cumulative effects of the structures. Here cumulative effects here cumulative effects, cumulative structure effects of structure, cumulative effects of the structure. Here it helpful the formation of a new species, new species formations are taken place. That is mainly due to the speciation. What is speciation means? Formation of new species. That means in natural selection better adaptive variations, that is due to the having useful variations are presenting, their number is gradually increased from a generation to the generations. So here will having a cumulative effect of structures will having, so that will helpful for the formation of a new species formations are taken place. That is due to the speciation. And here and coming to the last one, that is an isolation. What is isolation means? Here it producing the barriers in a population. If can able to producing, that means it can be defined as separation of population by use, which prevents are divided into subunits by some barriers, which prevents interbreeding. That means the separation of population. Here it can be defined as separation of population into subunits by some barriers. Separation of population, separation of a population by some barriers, to produce, that means by some barriers which prevents, that means separation of population by some barriers which prevents interbreeding, which prevents an interbreeding. So here what is isolation means? Separation of population into by some barrier. That means here separation of population by subunits, by subunits by subunits, by some barriers, by some barriers which prevents interbreeding, we can call as. That means, for example, if we take this is a large population, this large population is divided into small populations. So that here it prevents the barriers. That means due to the barriers, here it helpful for the preventing of, that means preventing which prevents interbreeding. Interbreeding means the producing young ones from one generation to another. Here interbreeding, that means among various type of species. That means to interbreed among different species. Here it preventing, so such preventing we can call that as, such process we can call as the isolation. So here there are 4 type of isolations. One is geographical isolations, and second one is behavioral isolations, mechanical and genetical. First one is we can call as first one is geographical variation isolations. First one is geographical isolation, and second one is physical isolation, physical isolation. Third one is mechanical isolation, and fourth one is the genetical isolations. So these are the 4 types of isolation. The physical or otherwise we can call as behavioral isolation. So here geographical isolation. What is geographical isolation means? Here the suppression of it prevents interbreeding due to the physical barriers. Here it can be taken. Sorry. Now coming to the so here isolation means separation of the population into subunits by some barriers we can call as isolation. So here there are 4 types. One is geographical isolation, and second one is behavioral isolation. Third one is mechanical isolation, and the fourth one is the genetical isolation. So here geographical isolation means it prevents the interbreeding. It prevents interbreeding by the physical barriers. It prevents interbreeding by physical barriers. Here physical barriers means, example we can take in place mountains, seas, rivers. These are an example. An example is mountains, rivers and seas, etc. An example where it prevents the geographical isolation. And second one is behavioral isolation. It prevents interbreeding by the behavioral differences. Here it preventing interbreeding by the behavioral differences. by the differences. Example, we can call as countering and also nesting. Here this is an example where we can take in place countering, countership, nesting and mating. Countership, here example is countership, nesting and mating and etc. That means here it prevents interbreeding by the behavioral differences, we can call as and behavioral isolation. Next, the third one is the mechanical isolation. Here mechanical isolation can be taken place as it prevents interbreeding by the mechanical differential structures. Here it can be taken place by the different structural differences in the reproductive organisms. That is, here the mechanical isolation, it prevents interbreeding. It prevents interbreeding by the structural differences. The structural differences by the reproductive organisms. Reproductive organs. So here we'll having the mechanical, that is mechanical isolation can be defined as it prevents the interbreeding by the structural differences by the reproductive organisms, we can call as the mechanical and isolations. And last one is the genetical isolations. Here the genetical isolation is taken place due to an interspecific sterility. Here it is taken place due to the, here it is taken, that is it prevents interbreeding by, it prevents interbreeding here it prevents interbreeding by interspecific sterility. Interspecific sterility. That means here it is barriers. The interbreeding is one is physical barriers, that is interbreeding. It prevents interbreeding by the physical barriers in graphical isolation, behavior differences in behavioral isolation, and structural differences in mechanical isolation, and also it prevents the interbreeding by interspecific sterility by the genetical and isolation. So when these are taken place, here it helpful for the formation of a new species or formation is taken place. So that formation of a new species which will be taken place, it will be taken place, that is called as a speciation. So here in this genetical divergence result in the new formation of a species. So here the species which are forming having a common ancestral, that is a common stock produce becoming so dissimilar that there is no longer able to interbreed. This is called as a reproductive isolation. So here we'll having the reproductive isolation. The reproductive isolation. What is the reproductive isolation means? Here the common, that means the organisms which are having common ancestors, that means common forms are forming, but there is no longer interbreeding. Then such type of a process we can call as an reproductive isolation. Here these reproductive isolations due to the genetical divergence, here it helpful for the formation of a new species formation. That new species formation we can call as a speciation, is called as a speciation. Already we studied what is the speciation means, formation of a new species. That means due to these 4 isolations, that is genetical isolation, behavioral isolation, mechanical and genetical isolation, here it helpful for the formation of a new species. So this new species formation we can call as the isolation. So these are the characters, these are the factors, these are the 7 factors which affects that is the Weinberg law, or the factors affecting the mechanism of the evolution. So that is isolation, where you are having 4 types: physical, that is geographical, behavioral, mechanical and genetical. That is preventing by physical barriers, we can call as graphical, and interbreeding, prevents interbreeding by the behavioral differences, we can call as behavioral differences, that is isolation. Structural difference by the reproductive organs, we can call as the mechanical, and interbreeding, preventing interbreeding by interspecific sterility, we can call as the genetical isolations. So here these will be helpful: reproductive isolation. So these are the various factors, these are the 7 factors which affecting the rate of that is other factors affecting the Weinberg law or the mechanism of an evolution. Last one is this is the topic of the factors affecting the rate of Weinberg law.